Okay, welcome back to Hikes with Nick. This seemed a good place to pick back up, both because we have made another Nick level miscalculation for time and level of sun. Well, I shouldn't say Nick level. I kind of do this intentionally sometimes, so I can tramp around in the dark a little bit. You know, it's good to expose yourself to things you're not necessarily familiar with, but may not have a choice in experiencing at some point. So, you know, being outside at night in the winter is a good one of those, kind of more on the extreme side. But again, you know, we don't have mountains in the Midwest, okay? So we do what we can. We do what we can. We do have ice climbing. So as far as Michigan goes, not any in the Lower Peninsula, aside from Peabody's, which is an excellent place to check out. Have a couple of reels of their towers. They're in Fenton, Michigan. And yeah, that's the only place I found to go ice climbing in the Lower Peninsula. We have a ton in Munising. And there's actually technical climbing in the Upper Peninsula as well. So I do rag on the Lower Peninsula a lot. And it's partially just because, you know, I've gotten to experience some of the other parts of the country and the world. You know, like Banff is so radically different. It's all just these glacially carved behemoths towering in these lush verdant valleys, you know, brutal weather in the winter. In the Midwest, it just has a different sort of beauty. And don't get me wrong, it is beautiful. Michigan has many beautiful places. You'll probably get to see a ton of them on this channel / page, especially if you follow me over the years, because, you know, I've hiked a lot of trails in this area at this point. I get out to the park every chance I get. I like to bring the family too. Right now we've got our two little ones. So I do plan to do like some reels or a side series at some point, or shorts if this goes to YouTube. But about just tips to hike with kids. And I did mention that in episode 1 when I was kind of spitballing, but I am going to expand on that a lot more, like what to bring in a kid's pack, you know, what kind of mileage for what age range, what to do around cliffs, stuff like that, you know, which I think will be really valuable. So yeah, if you would like to learn more about all things nature, definitely feel free to listen in. So again, we're on the Penosha Trail here, and back to that Nick level miscalculation, which wasn't really a miscalculation. We've still got about 2.5 miles of trail. We don't have 2.5 miles of sun, as you can clearly see from the sky above us. But this is a good segue actually into like the 10 essentials. So like what should you bring on a hike? Yeah, let's kind of talk about that. So obviously the contents of your pack are going to vary by the hike you're doing, the time of year you're hiking, really what conditions you expect on the trail. And that's gonna range from, you know, the kind of clothes you bring to maybe some specialized equipment. But there are kind of 10 essentials, and you can find these, you know, in many videos all over the place. You know, REI has a great session about them, and really it's a list of 10 things that should be in your pack whenever you're hiking. And you know, a lot of people never carry these. So let's go ahead and run through the list. So starting with the first one, which is pretty common nowadays, navigation. So what do we mean by navigation? We mean a map, compass. Yes, the smartphone is great. The Garmin is great. I've got both. But really, you always kind of want to prepare for a worst case scenario when you're hiking, and part of doing that is kind of having a map of the area or a way to navigate the area if all of your electronics fail for whatever reason. It's a very useful skill to have. Also a talk for another time, how to read a map and how to navigate. But so the first essential is really going to be navigation and a backup method of navigation. You can also kind of include in that, if depending on the level of danger, you know, whatever you're undertaking, like an inReach or a satellite communicator, beacon, stuff like that. So what's the second essential? So that's going to be light, or a headlamp, or really some source of light. So, you know, if you're out longer than you intend, you've got a way to see and to maybe read that paper map and compass. You also want to have some kind of backup method for that light. I have, as I mentioned, like I've got a headlamp. I don't think I mentioned this in this video, but in my pack right now, for example, I've got a headlamp, and then I've got batteries for that headlamp, backup batteries, and then I'm a little overkill, so I also have a backup headlamp with its own batteries. And that's just because light's pretty important, especially if it's a more treacherous or hazardous descent, or even just a hike, you know, especially when it's snowy like this, things get slippery. So number 3, what is number 3 going to be? Well, the order of this can vary too, you know, it's really, it's whatever. So number 3 is going to be a knife. You always want to have a knife. It's an extremely useful tool, from everything from, say, you need to make a splint, you can do that with a branch. If you need to, knives are especially important in climbing. Like if you need to, you should always have a knife to be able to cut a rope if you need to. But yeah, just general survival can be used with flint to make a fire. So it's actually a really good segue into the next essential, which is going to be number 4. Fire. So fire, really, you always want to have some kind of source of igniting a fire, whether that be a lighter, matches, or just a knife and flint. you really want to be able to create a fire, both to call for help and to be able to stay warm. Another one, number 5, is usually going to be sun protection. So sunscreen, clothing that covers your skin, you know, stuff that's going to keep the ultraviolet rays of the sun from burning you to a crisp. And eye stuff too is one that gets missed, so that becomes particularly important. A lot of the examples I'm going to give are going to be mountaineering ones, but for example, on a glacier, on a sunny day, the snow is so bright that it literally burns your corneas and your retinas. So you need to wear some kind of eye protection on a glacier, otherwise you can go snowblind, and it can be permanent. Like you just want to avoid that, and it's extremely hazardous if, like, it's an alpine route. All right, next up we've got number 6, shelter. So shelter is going to be really like an emergency shelter is what I mean by this. So like a bivvy, some kind of sleep system, emergency sleep system really, that you can post up in for the night or for whatever period of time until someone can locate you. Remember, the general theme with all of these is planning for the worst. Number 7, also going to be super important, a first aid kit. You know, and that we're going to have to do a video on how to make a first aid kit. That'll be a good one. Yeah, stay tuned for that. I will do one of those. But your first aid kit is going to be kind of like your pack in that its contents vary. Oh boy. Let's stay in the non-crushed into ice snow. But yeah, the contents of your first aid kit are going to be a lot like the contents of your pack, in that they'll vary by the hike or expedition you're going on. So, like, for example, one of the things in my first aid kit when I'm in Colorado is Diamox. That has to be used with descent. That's a caveat. But like, if it's being used in an emergent setting. But yeah, that's one thing I usually bring with me in case of emergencies for acute mountain sickness to Colorado. Another, some medications too that I would recommend having in your first aid kit. We'll get more into this when I make that other video, but are going to be prescription only, like ondansetron, which is Zofran. It's an anti-nausea medication. So like we'll talk about that in the first aid video, but really you want to customize the contents of your pack to any kind of hazards you can anticipate on the route or the hike. Okay, so then we're going to get, for the 3 finals, we're going to get into the extras. So we want extra of all 3 of these things. We want extra food, extra clothing, and extra water. So let's go ahead and just start with the 2 basics, food and water. Self-explanatory, like pretty much everything else on the 10 essentials list. You want to be prepared for a worst case scenario. So you want to have enough food to keep you adequately energized, at least able to, kind of fend for yourself. It really depends on your tolerance for risk and the length of your hike and the risk of something going wrong on your hike. It's a nice, nice grove here. But you really want to have at minimum like an extra day's worth of food. Like you want to be able to eat, you know, like bare minimum snacks for a day. Like that is really the bare minimum I put in my pack anytime. As far as water, it's really gonna depend. I personally sweat a lot. TMI, I know, but here we are. I'm actually kind of sweating right now, and it's 26 degrees. But yeah, so water, it's really going to vary a lot by individual. You should have a set minimum though. So like the minimum I'll typically bring on, like, let's say even, say it's like, I really don't hike anything under 3 miles, and for me, I bring 2 liters, like minimum, anytime I go hiking. Like that's the smallest amount of water I bring. Unless if it's less than 2 miles, I'll bring a liter. But otherwise, I've usually got like a hydration pack and typically like an additional bottle. Pro tip, the additional bottle is great to have because if you carry any like drink mixes, especially useful if you are out in the wilds of Michigan sweating, or wherever the wilds of you are from are. Yeah, electrolyte mixes. So like a Gatorade, something that's got sodium, potassium, magnesium, and chloride in it. You know, and if you have like a spare bottle, you can easily mix that drink just straight into the spare bottle and not contaminate your reservoir. Another, like, this is, again, it's going to get into where you are, what your hike's like, how long it is, risk tolerance again. But I typically, if the area I'm going is not frozen like this, I will typically bring a filter and iodine with me if I'm going to be passing any kind of water source, or if I know there's water in the area. And that acts as like kind of your emergency again. All right, so that kind of brings us into extra clothing. So the last of the 10 essentials, extra clothing. Oh man, it's a good discussion. So generally this is going to vary by hike and the conditions you're expecting, but I always like to say you should always have a hard shell. You should always have a hard shell, like one of your layers at any given time. Whether you're wearing it or it's in your pack, it should be a hard shell. Like, and I don't care where you are. It's just always, it's always applicable. And what I mean by a hard shell is basically some kind of water resistant or proof oh, well, let's check the map here real quick, because we're already running out of daylight, so I'd rather and here we go, navigation. So I have a dedicated GPS with me. I don't typically use that. It's more for accurate route tracking than anything else. So let's see, we should be this way. So typically I'll also run, the app I'm using nowadays is called Gaia, and you can see it's, they have a a premium membership option. I think it's 30 or 40 bucks a year. Definitely worth it. But yeah, so navigation again, need to have some kind of navigation, and it's easy to see why in a time like winter that it's so important, because we've just got 2 trails, no signage, and it's getting dark, so you really, like, again, we're out here intentionally, but you don't want to be out here miles longer than you have to. Alright, so back to extra clothing and hard shells. So yeah, hard shell is some kind of water resistant or proof outer layer, and this could be like a parka to like a Gore-Tex jacket, just basically something that resists rain, even if it's not supposed to rain where you're going. In addition to that, oh, this is fun stuff. Kind of breaking in these mountaineering boots on this trail, which I'm curious to see how my feet will feel after 5 miles, because mountaineering boots are quite stiff. Ooh. Okay, so in addition to a hard shell, you really want to have a base layer. So that's what you're really going to be wearing at all times. Depending on the conditions, there are lighter and heavier base layers. Yeah, obviously, you know, go to an outdoor store and check it out. Materials that the clothing should be made out of, topic for a whole nother time. Honestly, we can go through Freedom of the Hills, though, which is essentially the mountaineering textbook. Now, I am drawing most of my knowledge from that, just as a reference. Excellent book. So in addition to a base layer, you're typically going to want to have some kind of mid layer. And this can be like a hoodie, or you know, something that you can take on and off. And then depending on, you know, what your conditions are, you're going to want to have something that's like down or fleece, that's a bit heavier as your outer layer. And again, it'll vary. Like right now I have on a base layer and a parka. That's because I run hot. Again, it's about 26 degrees, but I could throw open the vents on this and be fine. But yeah, I run hot, so, you know, somebody else might need this parka, a base layer, and like a mid layer. So like, I do have 2 backup mid layers on me, and I also have a bivvy on me. So worst case scenario, I could spend the night out here. It wouldn't be ideal, and probably it would be illegal, but I would be okay for the night. And really, that's the goal with the 10 essentials. You really just want to insulate yourself against catastrophe, the unexpected. You know, maybe you get lost in the woods, or just you're taking way longer than expected, or you get hurt. You really want to just be able to get yourself out of those situations or call for help. Really just to be able to be prepared. That's all you can do, really. And it's out here, it is the difference between life and death. And yeah, that's, sorry that got a little rambly. I think that was a good talk. If you enjoyed this video, feel free. I think I'm going to be eligible for stars on like February 6th. So after that, if you would like to support me going into this full time. Feel free to send stars, or, you know, even a like, follow, anything is great. And thanks for watching, guys. This has been Hikes with Nick, episode 4. We're just gonna do a second episode here. Yeah, this is episode 4 now. Yeah, this is gonna be a little unorganized for a while. Maybe after a certain point I'll start writing a script, but we're not there yet. So thank you for bearing with the chaos, and have a great night, guys.